But before any of that, I'm going to ask Seb and James to explain to me a comic book concept that, as a movie fan, I just don't understand. And this week, you guys, I've been reading about... There's this guy called Joss Whedon, and buried amongst the news of Buffy 20th anniversary and reunions and all that kind of exciting stuff was this little detail that he's probably going to write and direct a Batgirl movie. Except it's not the Batgirl that I'm familiar with from animated shows and, hey, Batman and Robin and Oracle and games. It's a post-New 52 Batgirl who I know nothing about. So what's the current status quo of Batgirl, and what is the Batgirl that Joss Whedon is going to adapt?
This is a very good question for Seb, because I have no clue.
No, I mean, actually, I think maybe it's been a bit misleading by just calling it New 52 Batgirl, because that is the Batgirl that you know about. Batgirl in current continuity is Barbara Gordon.
Okay.
She is Commissioner Gordon's daughter. She is inspired to become Batgirl after, by Batman, go off her own back, becomes Batgirl. I think basically that where there's confusion is that a little-known comic you may have heard of from the 1980s called The Killing Joke featured a scene in which Barbara, who was already pretty much retired by that point, was shot and paralysed by the Joker. And after that, it was actually, I think, in the pages of Suicide Squad, she became Oracle. And, there was a pretty... God, it must be at least 20 years, really, where she was Oracle in the DC universe. And to a lot of people, the sort of the status quo that they had grown up with was Barbara Gordon used to be Batgirl and now she's Oracle. And arguably, pretty much most of the best stories about her were with her as Oracle, not as Batgirl. Now, there were other Batgirls after her. There was Cassandra Cain, who's a very popular character, who's now Orphan in current Batman continuity because Barbara Gordon is Batgirl again. And Stephanie Brown, who was originally a vigilante called Spoiler, and she was Robin's girlfriend, Tim Drake Robin's girlfriend for a while. She was very briefly Robin, and she became Batgirl after Cassandra Cain. But when they did the New 52 reboot, Barbara was Batgirl again, and in a very kind of classic setup, really, in the sense of, it was, to begin with, it was unclear as to whether she had always been Batgirl or if the Oracle thing had still happened. And then I think I didn't read it much past the first couple of issues, but it became apparent that the paralysis and everything had still happened, but she'd recovered from it and she'd gone back to being Batgirl. So that's really the New 52 version of Batgirl is basically she had that injury, she had been Oracle for a while, and she went back to being Batgirl. Now she did also recently get a kind of a sort of reboot or revamp, but it was kind of a stylistic revamp rather than a continuity reset, where they sort of... I don't know if they actually used any kind of continuity trick to de-age her, but she was kind of back at college and moved to a town called Burnside and sort of got a new costume that was a bit more up to date. And the team was Cameron Stewart and Brendan Fletcher writing it and Babs Tarr drawing it, so it was a kind of very, very trendy and cool creative team, and had that quite cartoony, but that style that if you look at Marvel, at things like Squirrel Girl and America and stuff like that, it's that.
Do you want to circle this background to Joss Whedon?
Anyway, yeah, but Joe asked me to explain Batgirl. I've just explained Batgirl.
So. I think a good way to circle this back to Joss Whedon is for me to ask, which of that bit of post New 52 Batgirl seems to you like the stuff that they're going to adapt? Is it going to be the Gail Simone relaunch, or is it going to be this Batgirl at Burnside stuff that was...
I get the impression that it's the Gail Simone style stuff, which is basically classic style Batgirl in the present day sort of thing.
Right. Okay.
That's the impression that I get. I mean, that might just be that all of the news stories about it illustrated it with pictures from that era. But I don't know that the newer Batgirl, while I think, it has been... It was a pretty good book. I don't know if it's kind of had the cultural resonance. Because the thing about Batgirl is, like, Batgirl is a character that people recognise. I mean, tracing her origins all the way back, she debuted in the TV series.
Yes.
If you don't count the Betty Kane version of Batgirl that predates Barbara Gordon, that's Bat-Girl. But Barbara Gordon Batgirl was created for the '60s TV show, and
caused uproar at the time, I'm told, amongst Batman fans.
that doesn't plus ça change. But the point is, because of that, she's a character that people will recognise in that classic form. Also, Barbara Gordon is a great character, and kind of, I think is a character that's worth focusing on. I would actually just like to, what I did want to get in, because it's not a comic that I'll probably get a chance to recommend on the podcast for a while. Batgirl Year One is a comic from about 10 years or so ago that it's an origin story for Barbara Gordon as Batgirl. I think it's written by Chuck Dixon, it's drawn by Marcos Martin, so James, that might interest you. And it's just a fantastic, really enjoyable series. So that's worth a look if you want to know more about why Batgirl is any good.
And I'll do what Amon would do if he was on the podcast again, which is to recommend the 2-episode arc of Batman the Animated Series that introduces Batgirl, and it's really fun. But this Joss Whedon movie sounds like it's going to be part of the DCEU, but maybe not like intricately tied into it.
Which is
that sounds
the
like
place for it.
Yeah, that sounds like maybe the approach that the DCEU could take now, and just go, all right, we're going to do movies set in this big universe, but they're about as connected as Daredevil is to Spider-Man or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. They're in the same universe. We'll say they're in the same universe, but let's carry on. Maybe you can do like
having cake and eating it.
Yes. It's worked for Hollywood for many a decade, I'm sure.